is now 1 minute 50 behind the two leaders.
Well, that's going to be a tough day for Andre Schmil to try and pull himself back into this, because these are all the big names. That's Wilfred Peters there, just losing the top of the cobblestone crown there. But I have to say, Ludo Dirksen on the front there is an absolute beast. Servais Carnarvon there is the rider coming through in 4th position. The Cofidis rider there is Philippe Gaumont, a man very much at ease on the North of France races. There's Georgie Hincapie too, looking comfortable, followed by Weissermann in the pink, and the Rabobank rider coming through there. I'm not sure if that was not Eric Decker. And Roman Weinstein's the world champion, seems to be in a little bit of difficulty right now.
Well, what a select group this is now, and remember, we've still got all of the big cobble sections ahead to come yet. Dirksen's just driving on. He seems to be much happier when he's doing the work here. Doesn't seem to mind that he's using an awful lot of energy in what is such a long race, because he's seeing the cobblestones first. On the right there, it's one of the neutral service motorbikes has bit the dust, and so there's no privileged people on these cobblestones. There they are.
Well, a point of interest, in fact, the race organisation saying that the only motorbikes allowed on the course, including the television and the police and the race photographers, have to be trials bikes today, scrambling bikes specifically designed for off-road use. If you've got the normal BMW 1000cc bike that we normally see in these bike races, you're not allowed to travel on the cobblestone sections. They've taken that precaution because these roads are very dangerous indeed. But this man is an absolute animal, and we've seen him in Tour of Flanders going to the front, trying to blow the race to pieces on the cobbled climbs. Today he's trying to rip everyone to pieces on the cobblestone sections. And just look at the way Wilfred Peters behind is fighting to stay on his back wheel. Point of interest is these two riders are actually training partners. They live next door to each other in the northern parts of Belgium.
Well, these are the two leaders surviving now, Broad and Voigt. Voigt is the rider in green, but the actual group is closing in rapidly, and I think the orders are coming here to move out all of the following vehicles, and there they are. Well, there's nothing anybody can do. The Dirksen is leading the chase. There are around about 17 spread out down this particular sector of cobblestones, and we're shortly going to have pulled in the last of the escapers who broke away at 44 kilometres, and we're now approaching 135. So they've had almost 100 kilometres of freedom.
Well, the big difficulty about Paris-Roubaix is actually controlling the race from the referee's point of view, because if you do get caught by a group coming up from behind, and especially on a day like this, there is absolutely nowhere the cars or the motorbikes can go, because it's very unsafe for everybody. Wilfred Peters is there now. He's taking up the pacemaking on the front. He wants to nip through the cars there and hope with the confusion that he drops one or two riders off the back, and he's mad. I want to close my eyes at the moment. The speed this man is going through here, it's a lot more scary to watch this from the television point of view than actually out on the bike, because you're totally concentrated when you're doing this. But Wilfred Peters, he is a man today.
And our TV camera doing better than most as he gets through in front of Florent Brard, this young man who turned pro in 1999, but this year's had taste of victory twice. His first 2 wins as a professional, and he's right in the thick of it with the real stars of the sport now, and he's going to wonder what has hit him here in Paris-Roubaix. Big Wilfred Peters, a star of previous Paris-Roubaix, scorches up to the outside now of Florent Brard, and he's holding his own along with Jens Voigt as they reassemble at the front.
You see what a true star and a true domestique he is. He looks over his shoulders to immediately ascertain which riders are with him coming out of those cobblestone sections. He's got a teammate there. It's hard to recognise, but the man on his right shoulder there was Servais Carnarvon, the former champion of Holland. You can just spot Georgie Hincapie coming across there. The pink jersey of Stefan Weissermann is very evident for the moment. It's about the only jersey that shows up in the weather conditions that we're actually having to deal with this afternoon. Hincapie moving very much to the front there, very happy with the situation right now. It seems as if one man who has slipped off the back there, in fact, is Johan Museo. As we look at the back of the group here, this is Agneluto. He's hopefully going to stay in contact with the group. 16 sections of cobblestones left to go, 51. He rides for the Cofidis team. That's Nico Matin, a very good bike rider. He's got a couple of teammates in the front group as well, and he will be looking after today, I think, Philippe Gaumont, who seems to be in excellent form.
Well, that's Matin at the front, while this rider seems to be wanting to control this race from the front, and he doesn't worry about anybody. Ludo Dirksen, former champion of Belgium, a stage winner of the Tour de France, started as a professional very late in his career. He never wanted to turn professional until in the end people said, look, you are so strong you must. I think he was 27 before he became a pro bike rider, but he is so strong, isn't he? As he drives on, look at the scramble behind. Now we can hardly recognise those who have been obliged to follow wheels. fields, and that's the big difference, Paul. The men behind, this looks like Servais Canavan coming through, just about recognising him, but he's covered in mud by following the wheels, whereas Dirkson's almost clean in respect, because he's setting all of the pace. Now then, they're still all together here. We are hearing that there are chase groups, and the Plankett, Schmill group, and Ballerini is still there. A minute 45 back, so they're holding their own at the moment, but they've missed the vital split and they're not getting back.
You see how Carnarvon here has adopted a different way of wearing his glasses as well. He's got them tucked onto the front end of his nose there, so that the mud comes up into the bottom part of those glasses, and he's actually peering over the top. That's a very brave move. Talking to Magnus Backstedt this morning, he was actually wearing motorbike goggles for today's race. But the real tough Belgian rider in second position there, Ludo Dirksen, there's no glasses for him. All he wants to do is ride at the front on these cobblestone sections, and you can hardly recognise the man behind him, who looks as if he's in a dark suit. Well, that is Georgie Hincapie, the US postal rider, who's in this group at the moment, and the group seems to have split completely over this section of cobblestones, Phil, and I think when we come out of it we will only have 8 or 9 riders in the lead.
Well, this race has started early, big time this year, and it's because of the slippery cobblestones that's done that. Still in there is Jens Voigt and Broad, but I think, in fact, they are beginning to find the pace a little bit too much now. I think that Jens will be a little bit upset that coming up in this forward group are none of his teammates. That was no doubt the point of his attack, but they haven't made this vital split. And Stuart O'Grady, who was hoping to be right on the sharp end coming onto the first set of cobbles at Troisville, well, he wasn't, and he's not made the split. But he did know what he should have done, Paul. He was absolutely right. The riders at the front of the bunch, when they hit the cobblestones, got away with it.
Well, that's the important thing on a day like this. This will be a legendary Paris-Roubaix. Riders will talk about it for a long time to come, and now the rain has come down. That may well wash a bit of mud off the bike riders at the moment, but it's going to make the thighs a lot more difficult, because the temperature out here at the moment is not very much more than 5 or 6 degrees Celsius, and that will really freeze these riders to the bone. Hincapie looking very concentrated, a bit isolated right now because there are 3 Domo Farm Freak riders in this group. Ludo Dirksen is on his own at the moment. May well be there's a 4th rider in there, because Johan Museeuw may just be tagging onto the back of the group.
And don't forget the world champion, who doesn't ride in their colours, Roman Weinstein's also in here. So maybe they've learned the lesson, Paul. It's just taken a little while to warm into the season, perhaps because they have been missing the moves, but they know you can't afford to miss a move in this particular race. There's too many imponderables. Too many things can happen to you if you're forced to chase early on for a simple mistake like missing a move, because sooner or later you might have a fall, a puncture, or just slip out of the group.
Philippe Gaumont taking a drink. Got the bands on as a former French national champion. This is Museeuw on the front, looking very strong right now. This man almost lost his life last year in a motorbicycle accident, having 2 years previously almost lost his life in Paris-Roubaix in the Forest of Arenberg. And this year, with that change, we're going back into the Forest of Arenberg in exactly the same direction that we went when Museeuw had his accident. He will be thinking about that, and certainly it was on conditions like this. So a lot of riders somewhat worried about the new approach to the Forest of Arenberg, because when you do hit that section, you're hitting it at around about 40 miles an hour going downhill on slippery stones.
Well, there's a look here at Servais Canavan. He actually has washed off a bit of the mud as he's come out of that rain right now. But I often wonder how they can wear glasses at all here, because once you rub those lenses they smear, and you've still got to find your way over the cobblestones. As the riders now starting to come through again, Nico Matan is there, Ludo Dirksen, he looks so determined, this rider, he drives the race through. This is an interesting group. Philippe Gaumont, Chris Peers are other riders in this breakaway, Stefan Westerman, Van Bon, Rolf Sorensen, I haven't actually seen him, George is certainly here, Dirksen we've seen, Weinstein is always around, and we've seen Museeuw and Peters and Canavan. The other man we haven't seen much of, Paul, but should be enjoying it immensely, is the bronze medalist in the World Cyclocross Championships, Sven Nys.
This is definitely the kind of situation that a man like him should appreciate and be good at as well. Looking here at Nico Matan, there's a group of 5 riders at the moment, around about 1 minute behind that group of riders, in fact containing Franco Ballerini, a former 2-time winner, and the group of André Schmiel. And we are hearing that Schmiel is trying to ride across on his own at the moment, Phil, is at 1 minute 35 seconds. So Schmiel, a tough bike rider, he hasn't given up yet. He wants to perform well in Paris-Roubaix, but he's putting in so much effort. I don't see him catching back such a group here. This is really the heads of state of the world of professional cycling, because there's a lot of big names in this group.
Strong, alert men have found their way to the leader group here in Paris-Roubaix this year. The 99th time, and it's turning out to be an absolute cracker. George Hincapie, the only US postal rider to make it, but that was what the plan was by the team, to make sure that George was protected as long as possible so they could get in. We're now moving on to Pavé section 15 at Haspre, and this is 1.7 kilometers, and they are absolutely flying over the mud here, and it looks as though it might be Wilfred Peters, is it, who's got the lead now?
Peters on the front, followed by Servais Carnarvon, third place going to Georgie Hincapie. Actually, in that little group of 5 riders at 1 minute, Phil, is also another former winner of Paris-Roubaix, Andrea Taffy, who was also involved in an accident on the first section of cobblestones, is trying to pull himself back up to the lead at the moment, but it's going to be very difficult. And in the past, we've seen the Mappé team being omni-dominant in this Paris-Roubaix Classic, and today, force of numbers at the moment is actually leaning over to the team that was formed by the split-up of Mappé, the Domo Farm Freaks, because, as you said, definitely there are 4 riders from Domo Farm Freaks in this team, and at the moment, the 2 men doing the bulk of the work on the front are Servais Carnarvon, followed by Wilfred Peters. Johan Museo taking a little bit of a backseat, and I think he's obviously reserving himself for the final few kilometres.
Well, that would be the likely tactic. Workhorse Servais Carnarvon here, former champion of the Netherlands. There he is, speaks very good English, and a very nice friendly chap when you meet him outside of Paris-Roubaix, but right now concentrating on the job in hand. Pavé sector 15 we are on now, 145 kilometres done, and he's got himself on the front. Even if you wanted to let somebody come through, it would be nearly impossible to do so. You don't move sideways, left or right on these pavé, because they're so slippery right now. You just concentrate and drive on by yourself. There's a long thin line. We've made it 16 riders in this leading group now, and they're getting away. They're still looking at nearly 2 minutes back to Schmiel, who apparently is chasing with Van Petergem, but we've seen nothing of this because our cameras are committed here with the leaders. And if they did fall back, Paul, to pick up the chase, they might never regain the front.
Absolutely not. The man on the back here is the 3rd Cofidis rider in the group. This is Chris Pearce. But the front of the group, you can see on a day like this, Phil, when the weather conditions are absolutely atrocious, it is very difficult, as you said, to go past the rider, to overtake. The rider on the front always wants to ride on the crown of the cobbles. You see how it sumps down on the left and right hand side of the road there. That is where the cobblestones get broken up, and that's where you end up getting impact punctures. So you can see Servais Carnarvon riding with a lot of pressure, a lot of power on the front here. He's trying to set the race up for his teammates because they realise with 4 men they're definitely in with a chance today. Domo Farm Freaks looking for the big win. They haven't had a real big win since the start of the season, yet they have been billed as one of the #1 teams in the world. But it's always difficult when you set up a brand new team to organise everything, to have the automatic responses that you need out on the road with a group of riders you bring together for the first time.
Carnarvon setting the pace. He knows what it's like to get to the stadium at Roubaix. He's 12th last year, and he's now 30 years of age. Servais has been a pro for 7 years. It seems like last year when he turned pro, because I followed his career with some interest, having made reasonable friends with him in Australia in the early 90s. But looking down from my helicopter now, the field's absolutely sodden with what has been a very wet and cold early spring here in Belgium and indeed all over Europe. As we now leave that stretch of pavé and continue slowly but surely towards the forest of Arenberg, where there is a huge crowd and some very bad cobbles waiting. One more stretch to come at Havluy, Paul, and this is a stretch which we're seeing for the first time, I think.
Well, let's hope the water is gone. They've actually tried to pump water out of this section of cobblestones over the last few days. It's a brand new section that was brought into Paris-Roubaix to make the approach to the forest of Arenberg a smaller group. They figured that this section of cobblestones would actually split up the field, and that way only have a group of 30 or 40 going into Arenberg together. Right now, the organisation must be quite happy because this leading group is only 16 riders for the moment, so we will be going into Arenberg with a smaller group, but already it's a huge group of names who we expect to see at the front in Paris-Roubaix, and these guys, all champions in their own right, are now looking at fighting out more than 100 kilometres before they get to the finish line.
Well, looking here at the leaders, situation behind Andrea Taffy himself, the past winner of this event, is riding at 1:15. He's missed the split. Then we've got Karsten Kroon, and we've got also Franco Ballerini, twice a winner, at 1:22. And Andre Schmill and Peter van Petergem in a group at 1:50. They're the time checks reaching us. But right now, the pressure on at the front and nobody waiting for anybody. Sitting again at the back here is Angeluto. Was part of the original breakaway. He had a flat tyre while he was in that, but he's now fallen back a ways.
This is the group there. In fact, that looks very much like Franco Ballerini's group, so this will be the second big group on the road trying to ride themselves in. Just off the front of this group will be Andrea Taffy. You can see one rider there, Phil, just trying to ride away. He was in this group a little while ago, and he may well now be thinking that he is strong enough to ride across to the front group. But with those big names in the front, 1:15, 1:20 seconds is a very difficult call.
Official cars there moving off the road to let the breakaway through. We're heading now to Havluy. A next stretch of cobblestones. After that we'll be into the forest itself. Everybody afraid of the next section of cobblestones. At one stage the organisation were going to pull it completely out of the race. They said they could not drain the water out of the holes, but they seem to have taken some recompense from that all week, and it's dried a little bit for them, although the rain has been falling overnight and occasionally since we left Compiègne. There's the world champion Weinsteins in the white jersey. It's amazing that's still white after the ride today, I think, as Wilfred Peters off to the right. He used to have a white jersey as well, Paul, and behind him is Servais Knaven. And here comes Ludo Dierksens again. Johan Museo taking more interest at the front now. This group has got a very good rhythm going, and with 4 Domo riders in it, numerically they're in big strength here.
It's a chance here to see the faces on these guys. It is very concentrated. They realise there's a lot of work to be done before they get to the finish. Right in the middle there, in the red and white jersey, you can see Rolf Sorensen. Good to see him, almost 36 years of age, riding at the front of the one-day classics again. Kind of a rebirth, I think, for Sorensen, riding now for a fully Danish squad. The first time in his career that he's been able to do that, and I think he will be trying to show the clean pair of wheels to the younger members of the team. The only way to lead, I suppose, is by example, and that's a great example we're getting from Rolf Sorensen here today. The world champion, I reckon, though, must be the #1 man for Domo Farm Frites. They tried to bring him into Tour of Flanders in an ideal position, and today, if we go onto the stadium like this man has got a great chance of winning. But this race, I feel certain, Phil, will split up an awful lot before we get down to the finale.
Jens Voigt having problems with his vision now as he tries to clean the lenses, and the more you rub them, the less you'll see, I would suspect, as the man who started the move at 44 kilometres out is doing very, very well to still have legs to stay with this rather select front group here, which is now a further 100 kilometres down the road. We're around about 150 kilometres covered now, so just over 100 kilometres to go. And the sign that when the race usually starts is coming through the forest of Arenberg. I would suggest it started a lot earlier than that today. Slipped away a little bit here now, further down the group. This is the Ballerini group, and trying to keep control of things. Taffy is back in it, and so we've picked him up. He's number 37 there. And they are riding about 1:20 seconds behind that front group.
Well, there's still a possibility for these two former winners to ride themselves back up to the leading group of 16. Last time we saw the leading group, though, Phil, they were all riding very well together. The rider in the yellow jersey there of Team Coast is Frankie Hoy. He's the leader, really, for the classics of this new team. The team which, during the winter months, signed up some very big names like Alex Zuller and Fernando Escartin, in a hope to try and qualify for the Tour de France. The selections would be made in around about 1 month's time, which is why it's much more important this year for a lot of the teams to ride well in the classics, because in previous years, the selection for the Tour de France has been made during or after the Tour of Italy.
Now, these riders not really organised here, probably mixed feelings from 1 or 2 of them because of their teammates up in the breakaway. But Nico Matan is up in the breakaway, as we have said, but Ballerini here would love to be. This is his swan song. Goodbye to all of this pain, toil and tears for him. There he is. This wonderful man has brought so much happiness to Paris-Roubaix. He thinks this is the greatest race in the world, and because of the treatment he receives from the French public, it's strange to say this, an Italian choosing a top French race to say his farewells. And when this race gets to the finish, they will have an official reception on his behalf at the finishing line.
Certain riders end up having a love affair with Paris-Roubaix, and certainly Franco Ballerini has had one. He first won the event back in 1995, and then he came back and won it again in 1998. But he always has tried to make this the most important season, the most important rendezvous of his season. He's built his whole classics program around riding well at Paris-Roubaix. It's a difficult thing to do, but he has earned himself the name as a specialist of this great one-day race. This man we're looking at right now on the front field is also a specialist of Paris-Roubaix. That is Johan Museo, and what a great comeback it was after smashing his kneecap in the Forest of Arenberg and fighting back to come up once again to take the win out in this race. And it would be amazing if he could win it again today.
Yes, it certainly would, and boy, would everybody be happy at Roubaix, because although we're in France, they love again the man who comes from just over the Belgian frontier, which is only a few kilometres away, of course, from Roubaix. Clouds are lifting a little bit, I hope. I'm not sure that I'm saying that to convince myself or to help the riders out here, but certainly as we race now towards the forest, the coal heaps in the distance as we head to the area where they once mined coal, and where the coal mines have now become something of national monuments, we are racing in. Remember last year, Paul, when we met Jan Slablanski at the Forest of Arenberg, he claimed to be the only man to have been above and below the ground there.
Well, Jan Slablanski, of Polish origin, moved to the north of France with his family just after the war, and he actually became a miner in the mine head, which is just above the Forest of Arenberg, and he thought it was quite amusing. I don't think he worked down the mines too often, maybe only 7 or 8 months, but he went on to become a brilliant bike rider, including a title at the World Championship level, and certainly was one of France's great heroes.
Dirksen's patching up a little bit of a gap in the lead group there in that mauve jersey, but they've all come back together again. Now we're seeing the helicopter traps underneath there, which are those electricity cables on pylons. You've got to watch out for those when you're concentrating on filming Paris-Roubaix from a helicopter. But that means we are heading now towards the Forest of Arenberg. Still a little way to go. We're out in the country as this little group, for the moment, I sense a little lack of coordination here. The riders not really getting it together. Well, if that's bad up front, look at this behind. They're losing ground wholesale here, because they seem to have almost stopped racing in that second group right now.
I think most of these riders being caught out by the fact that the race really split up on the early sections of cobblestones. This is another group further down the road there. That's Maximilian Chiandri on the far side, and these riders, I would say at the moment, must be trailing by around about 3 minutes. A chance to look inside this group. In fact, Andre Schmiel is in this group. This is the Schmiel group. This is the third group on the road, and I reckon, Phil, that he is around about 1 minute and 40 seconds behind the leaders right now. So for him, I would say his Paris-Roubaix today is absolutely doomed.
Well, they're waving at the camera. I can't believe this, but they are convinced they're not going to see the front of the race today. Well, Schmiel won't be kept into that category. If he senses that, I'm sure he will try to move up, because he's a very determined rider and he's won this race in the past. Coursing over the canals here in northern France.
Well, we have one more section of cobblestones to go, Phil, before we get to the Forest of Arenberg. The Forest of Arenberg is 13 sections to go to the finishing line, and on the front here, this looks like Jens Voigt, so he too must have been left behind from the front group. Voigt in the front group earlier on. In fact, no, he's still, this is the front group.
Yeah,
bit of chaos here on the roads of Paris-Roubaix, but this is what the bike race is like when you're in weather conditions like this. Nobody really knows what is going on in the bike race. Most of all, the team management have a hard time keeping in touch with their riders, because the race can be split up from front to back by around about 10 minutes. The team managers actually go out the week before Paris-Roubaix to try and see if they can find shortcuts in the race, so that they can actually overtake dropped riders and get right up behind their men if the race does split up.
There's Rolf Sorensen tucked in at the back. It is amazing how Johan Museo can sense the moves. He never misses a breakaway in these early classics, despite all the personal problems he's had with his injuries these past few years. This man reads a bike race better than anybody else on the circuit right now, and we're looking at a rider here who knows what it's like to win Paris-Roubaix, and well, if he could win it this time, it will be extraordinary. The defending champion looking very good just now.
Hans de Klerk, the Lotto rider on the back there, he won't do very much in this group, Phil, because he will be getting information all of the time about the position of Andre Schmiel, and I can tell him right now, Andre Schmiel is losing big time. He's a minute 40 behind He's hardly made any inroads into the deficit, which at one time was a maximum of 1 minute and 50 seconds. So he really seems to be hovering. This is the second group on the road. This is the in fact, this is the first chance we've had to see the new leader of the World Cup, Gianluca Bortolami, after his win last week in the Tour of Flanders. So he too is trying to pull himself back into the race. There is Taffy then, as well as Ballerini, who's also in this group.
Well, Gianluca could be losing that white leadership jersey to the more consistent Weinsteins if it's to finish like this, because Weinstein yet again has put himself into a leading breakaway on a World Cup event. There's still a couple of more World Cup races to come before we close down for the early part of the season. We've still got Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Amstel Gold. Lance Armstrong's rumouring he's going to start in Amstel Gold, by the way. We haven't seen him in any of the World Cup races yet.
Just on the back of that group as well, Christophe Agneluto, one of the riders in the early breakaway of the day, with 6 riders going through there. Wearing number 5 is the big strongman Wilfred Peters. Number 1 is Johan Museo, as last year's winner. And one man who is doing a magnificent ride, really, is this young man, Florent Bras from Festina. He was in the early breakaway, still surviving. And what a chance it is for him to ride Paris-Roubaix and look at the faces and ride alongside names like Museo and, of course, Georgi Hincapie, who won Gand-Wevelgem just a couple of days ago.
You know, talking to George, Paul, we know he's here. We don't see him very often. He's riding a canny race right now, I think, knowing that the teams are up against him, and knowing now, after his great win in Ghent-Wevelgem, they respect him more than ever.
Well, he is, I really think, before the start of this race, regarded as one of the top favourites to take out the victory. There is Jens Voigt. George, I think, Phil, has changed his riding tactics. He's a lot more aggressive. In the past, for example, that move in Gand-Wevelgem a couple of days ago, he would not have reacted to. He would have waited for another rider to try and chase across the gap. He made the decision. He saw the move going and leapt on it immediately. When it came down to the sprint, he was very calm and collected and put in a perfectly timed finish. Right now, he's in a difficult situation, because although you can see by the way he's pedaling, he's got good form, the legs are good, the sun finally is coming out here on Paris-Roubaix, but he's isolated. If he has the slightest mechanical problem, he's going to have a hard time getting back. Domo Farm Frites have got 4 riders here, Cofidis have got 3 riders, Rabobank have got 2. Georgi Hincapie is totally on his own.
Yes, and this also reminds us, you know, if George had accepted at once the offer to join Mappe, which would have taken him away from the American teams, and of course which he turned down, then would he have won a classic race before this year? Many people think he would have done, because Mappe, until this year it appears, they were a great classic riding team.
But George Hincapie has got what it takes to win a Tour of Flanders or a Paris-Roubaix, and it may well be today that he's got the chance, but he does have to ride a very intelligent race now. He's actually there, Phil, 3rd from the back of the line at the moment. He's going to let Domo Farm Frites do a lot of the work, and he's moved right up to the front right now. He has to pay attention on the cobblestone sections and try and hide on the tarmac sections of the road when it's a lot smoother, keep himself out of the wind. Dirksen also is not worried at all by the Armado Domo riders in this group, because on this section of cobblestones we are now on section number 14 to go to the finish line. Dirksen comes to the front, puts the hammer down, wants to blow as many riders off the back of the group as he can.
He's not blowing George off. George is paying quick attention. This was the cobble stretch that they all feared. Every team came and took a look at this, and none came away with a favourable reply. But now they're on it, and this, as I say, a new stretch which lines the riders up. The idea was to break the field up before we entered the Forest of Arnhenberg in what is now known as the dangerous direction. But indeed, the organisation didn't count on the weather this year, because the weather has broken this field up long before this stretch. You can see that the cobbles have been very muddy. There's about 1 inch of it still lying there. But only a couple of days ago there was genuine concern they would not be able to drain any of the flood water off this stretch of roads. Dirksen, this man, just loves the cobblestones, straight onto the front now, but it's nice to see Hincapie taking no chance whatsoever and has gone there now into 2nd place.
Just look at the mud getting thrown up from Dirksen's wheels there as he tries and battles, in fact, to stay on the crown of these cobblestones. If there are any good Italians watching this today, they would be saying, "Che bestia, what a beast." This man is an absolute animal over these cobblestones. And you see all the other riders, they're having problems at the back there because they can't exactly see which line to follow because of all the dirt that is being sprayed up into their eyes from the rider in front. 3rd position there is Philippe Gaumont. a previous winner of Gont-Wevelgem, following number 111, who is this year's winner of Gont-Wevelgem. And Gaumond's gone straight by. He's mad. He's absolutely crazy, but he loves this race. You have to love this race to come here. I don't know how he held that up, Phil, but he really just flicked the back wheel straight.
And he just automatically corrected it. A reflex action, didn't fall, and there he goes again and does it once more. You can't look over your shoulder and hope to ride these cobblestones. But this group, I think when we come off these cobbles, we will find they have been stretched now, because Gaumond has lifted the ante a little bit more, but Hincapie is staying well in touch. This is going to be an absolutely superb race now to the Forest.
Absolutely magnificent. When they come out of this section of cobblestones, they have 8 kilometers to go to the Forest of Arenberg. Peters is the man on the left-hand side there, but his teammate, Servais Knaben, is riding a race as if he was possessed today. He realizes they've got a great favorite in their midst, Johan Museo, who's in good form, I reckon, and Ronan Weinsteins. He's the Dutchman on the squad. He's on the front there, hammering along. Moving up there is one of the riders, it looks like Sven Nys, who is still a cyclocross man at the front of Paris-Roubaix, and that doesn't happen very often. The best, most famous cyclocross man ever to take part in Paris-Roubaix was Monsieur Paris-Roubaix himself, Roger de Vlaeminck, who took out a world championships at the cyclocross, but he went on to win Paris-Roubaix 4 times, which I think was a lot more important to him.
If memory serves me right, Paul, with Roger de Vlaeminck, he didn't didn't have a single flat tyre in the first 11 times he rode this race, which is quite an unthinkable record. It'll never happen again.
The thing about de Vlaeminck was that he was such a magnificent bike handler, and he was able to let the front end of his machine float, and he seemed to always find the smoothest section of cobblestones, and he would ride over these cobblestone sections around about 40 miles an hour. Quite remarkable. I remember one year when I actually didn't ride Paris-Roubaix with the pros. I'd had an injury just 4 days before. I split a muscle open, and I came to see the race from the side of the road. You don't feel the speed as a bike rider because you're concentrating on the guys in front of you, but if you stand at the side of the road, the speed with which they hit the cobblestone sections is absolutely remarkable. This is Schmiel.
This is Schmiel. He's shed himself over everybody else. This is almost a show of desperation here from André Schmiel. We've got him timed at 2 minutes, and he's trying to desperately cross the gap alone now. He sensed, Paul, that group were not going to come back. We saw them wave at the camera. They'd already seen the end of their Paris-Roubaix, and this man says, right, it's me or nobody.
He's a tough man. He's one of the oldest bike riders in the profession right now, and he saw the rest of the group. The morale had gone away from that group, so he thought, well, I've only got one thing left to do, and that's to try and ride across on my own. He can only hope now, Phil, coming onto this section of cobblestones, with 8 kilometers to go to Arenberg, that there is chaos in Arenberg, and he manages to get onto the tail of the group. It's going to be a hard shot, but only one man, I think, in this race today could pull it off, and that is André Schmiel.
Well, this is a horribly long stretch of this race, 2.5 kilometers now. It's coming to an end for what is looking like 7 leaders here as they swing off the pavé. And we are now 157 kilometers covered. Chance to regroup, no big effort there. As Peters checks on his radio, we go back to André Schmiel. Has he got a problem here, or is he just struggling?
No, he's got a few problems there. It seemed as if his pedals were giving him some jip there as he tries to balance his machine on the top of the cobblestones. That ridge at the top is the most important place to ride when the weather's like this, and it seems to me as if he's lost a certain amount of his impetus. But this road is a very difficult road to keep your stability on, and André Schmiel is having a hard time today. He will get out of this section of cobblestones, and then he's going to have to ride 8 Ks on his own till we go to the next section, which will be the Forest of Arenberg, and I think then we'll see him start to lose time on the leaders.
Well, I know he's had a lot of bad luck today, and I think that was the main reason he missed the split coming through Troisville, but he's paying for it now with a lot of serious effort very early on here in Paris-Roubaix. You get some idea of the deficit because we're heading up to those houses there and the right turn, and we've seen the leaders already make that turn, so he is probably not gaining any time at the moment. Chance to look at his face, and it looks rather easy from the back, doesn't it? Then you get a glimpse of his face and you see just how hard he is trying.
Well, the bad thing for him is he can see in the distance the race helicopter is over the breakaway, so he can ascertain just exactly how far behind he is. It's a brave move by a man who was caught out in the first section of cobblestones in a pretty nasty accident and delayed by probably up to 3 minutes, because if you're at the back of the group in the first section of cobblestones, you do lose that amount of time. He's currently, the last time check was 1 minute and 40 seconds behind, and trying to ride across on his own is a monumental task, because the guys at the front, although they seemed a little disorganized coming off that last section of cobblestones, will immediately get themselves organized again because of the fact we've got 3 very big teams represented with multiple riders present.
Sven Nys going through again, trying to make a switch, and not an easy one at that, from cyclocross to road racing, but except today, of course, when one could forgive him for feeling at home. This is Weinsteins here, and now has he got a problem because he's talking to the team? No, he's moving back, he's coming back on. I think, in fact, Museo punctured. We thought he had, and we didn't see him. Now Weinsteins is bringing him back onto the group here.
This is a pretty strange move because we are now looking at a world champion pacing on the team leader. The team leader, Johan Museo, is coming back for injury. Now that says one thing for me today, Phil. That says that the leader of the Domo Farm Frites team today is Johan Museo. When a world champion drops back for somebody in his team, that tells you something. The team have confidence in Museo today. They feel that he can win this bike race again.
Well, they brought him back, or at least Weinsteins is bringing him back. Stefan Wesserman, who has also joined in there, he's had a bike change. Again, our cameras missed it, but he's now coming back and will be very grateful, I think, for the help of the World Championship Express there. That should bring us back to our original 16, because there's 12 here and 4 just coming through the cars. There they are. So nobody lost on the cobblestones, although we came close to losing Museo and Wesserman.
It's good to see the Festina rider, Florent Bras, is still in there as well. He's one, I would say, the only survivor. Another problem at the back, that's probably Sven Nys, the Rabobank rider, who also has stopped there with a problem. There are only 2 Rabobank riders in this leading group, the other man being Karsten Kroon.
So Nys has gone back. Just a quick count, quick head count there, revealing this breakaway more or less back together again. And we've lost Sven Nys. The Rabobank man who was here is now temporarily behind. He should get back, because when you ride Paris-Roubaix, you put the pressure on the cobble sections and rest if you can in between. There's no attacking each other at this point. It won't be that way, of course, towards the end, but right now there's still a long way to go.
It's actually a lot harder on the cobblestone sections than on these sections of tarmac. This is where they do recuperate a little bit, set the tempo, expecting everybody to come forward and share the pacemaking at the front before the next assault on the cobblestones. And when the weather is like this, it is so important, the cobblestone sections, to hit them in the first 5 or 10 places. This is Chris Pears on the front here, followed there by Nico Martin. In about 4th position, Philippe Gaumont. So Cofidis very strongly represented here. Cofidis is a team from the north of France. Their head office is not too far away from the stadium in Roubaix, just along the motorway which heads up to Ghent. It's a loan company, and at the moment they're loaning a lot of effort into the front of this main field.
We are approaching 160 kilometres into the race now, and we're approaching the Beecher's Brook in Grand National horse racing terms of this event as we come towards the long stretch of cobblestones through the forest. 2.5 kilometres of them are waiting the riders now.
This is a long section of cobblestones. We're about 5 kilometres away from there right now. Wilfred Peters in great form right now. A little laugh for him as he comes up alongside Philippe Gaumont. These guys are pretty happy with the situation. They've eliminated André Schmiel, who at the moment has gained 2 seconds on the rest of the pack. He's 1 minute 38 seconds behind at the moment, and if he does catch this leading group up, that will be a story to put in all of the history books, because he crashed in the first section of cobblestones. And look at this, you can hardly recognize that man on the front, but I can tell you it is Georgi Hincapie. His face and his jersey are totally black with the mud which is being thrown up here over these tough cobblestone roads in the north of France.
Well, I think all of this racing equipment will be good for training in after today, because I don't think it will ever wash up nicely again. Weinsteins, the world champion, proving to be a really solid bike rider as a world champion too, as he brings the line through. And this is Leon van Bon. I can only recognise him by his green shorts of the Mercury Viertel colours, because the rest of him is totally irrecognisable now. Just look at the state of these bikes as we swing back. 1 minute 25, I've got it now, Paul, as we've gone down the road to André Schmiel. This man is fighting himself back into Paris-Roubaix, and now there's a problem at the back, and I think it was Museo who had his foot off there.
That was Museo number 1 there. There's a stop there. Weinstein's has stopped as well. I think Weinstein's is going to have a bike change as well. Total chaos. You get lots of problems when the weather's like this. Lots of dirt and grit gets into the machines. Weinstein's is up. A quick bike change for him. He's up and running again. And I think we'll see 1 or 2 riders stop and wait for him. In fact, he's taken the opportunity there. Very professional move this, Phil. When you do change your bike, the spare bike doesn't normally have drinks on it. And what he's done here, watch this. He's taking the drinks off his racing machine and he takes them across to the spare. That is a man who's thinking clearly.
It is, and ever so casual. Really no hurry at all. It's only Paris-Roubaix. It's a long way to go. 160 kilometres done of the total of 254. And as now Weinstein gets back in, but no luxury for him of the waiting of a teammate, whereas he's just got Museo back up to the group when he waited for Johan.
There should have been a bit of panic, at least for Ronan Weinstein, but these real pros, they never do panic in a situation like that, because either you get back or you don't. We're around about 500 metres now from the entrance into the Forest of Arenberg, which is why we've got almost a bunch sprint. Everyone wants to be in the first 5. Hincapie's in about 10th position, a little bit too far back right now as they accelerate. Very shortly they'll go through the barrier, which is closed for almost every day of the year, only open for this race and Paris-Roubaix Amateur.
That's right, because normally you have to leave your cars and you have a very pleasant stroll in the forest. It's a natural wood, a very ancient woodland at that. It's once reverberated to the marching of Napoleon's armies. Well, now it's going to revert to the rubber of very thin racing tyres. Here comes the world champion picking his way through the cars as he's now trying to get back on the tail. A most crucial stage to puncture, Paul. That was bad luck, because now we're into the forest and he's at the back of the race. When you get under that bridge there, that's the start of the cobblestones, and it's dead straight. A real Roman road, this.
Absolutely mad, this road. It goes back to the Napoleonic times. It's straight as a die, but in fact it descends somewhat, and when you do hit it normally in the dry, you'll be hitting around about 40 miles an hour. At the back here, Nico Matin, you can see picking his way across there. We have actually got fixed cameras out here right now. Somebody's gone down. I think that was Gaumont.
Gaumont has crashed there, and he's on the road and he's not getting up, and in fact he doesn't look too good. This is indeed Philippe Gaumont. Museo picks his way around, the rest of the break does as well. There's Brad, the world champion's trying to get back.
Matin's picked his way around him there. Let's have a look at that again. Hincapie's the man in the front place, and woof, he's gone straight down. These cobblestones are so slippery, it's unbelievable. Van Bon picked his way around there quite remarkably, as we now see Georgi Hincapie leading Paris-Roubaix, the man who started this race as the #1 favourite from the United States, hails from New York, now lives in North Carolina, and it's devastation. You know, I have a feeling this is a very serious crash, though, for Philippe Gaumont. The team manager and the team soigneur are up alongside him, but he's not moving that leg, Phil, and that does not bode well.
And they've got to move him, because the cars have got to get through, because the chase is coming up. Schmill will be the next rider through. There's the telecom car. They're cleaning all of the team cars here, as Rabobank as well. We'll get back up to the front. Neutral service still ahead with the race direction. In the distance, it's an American, George Hincapie, now piling on the pressure. Looks like Wilfred Peters trying to get on terms.
This is amazing, because there's still an awful long way to go to the finish. This is the Forest of Arenberg. This is the most dramatic point of Paris-Roubaix right now. Just back there was Florent Bras. He's going out of the back at the moment. This is Nico Matin. His teammate Philippe Gaumont has just crashed dramatically, but Hincapie is showing them all a clean, I shouldn't say clean pair of wheels, because it's pretty dirty out there at the moment. He's showing them his tail wheel as he heads over the Forest of Arenberg. In second position there, Wilfred Peters is slipping all over the road trying to stay on the American's wheel.
And such is the luck of the draw. The rain has started to come down very heavily here in the Forest of Arenberg, as Hincapie is going alone with no teammates behind him. He can only be thinking, get through here safely and see who survives to work with him. Well, there's a rapid dash here and a gritting of the teeth by a man who has finished second and third before in this race, which is a lottery now. And this is Wilfred Peters trying to get up to George Hincapie.
Well, where are his teammates there? I think it's Servais Knaven in third place on the road. Looking further back, it looks as if that's Rolf Sorensen coming through now. Stefan Weissermann riding pretty close to the front as well. That is Knaven up there. Looking further back, I can't see Johan Museo, and it must be going through his mind right now. This is about the place that he crashed a couple of years ago and smashed his kneecap on this section of cobblestones. He will be happy once he gets away from here. Looking down here at the Rabobank rider, this is Sven Nys. Hincapie's down too.
Hincapie's fallen with the camera caught caught him there. He looks as though he's up and safe. Peters has gone through. Never looked to anybody. He's concentrating on the central passage through the Forest of Arnhem. Hincapie in all sorts of trouble. He cannot get going. I think he's punctured.
No, the five, but in fact he stopped again.
He just cannot get himself going in the momentum now. There's an American flag tucked off to the left here. Well, moments ago we would have seen George Hincapie leading through, but now Peters has got himself quite a lead. He hasn't missed a pedal rev yet as he comes up to a road he knows very well in both directions in Paris-Roubaix. Wilfred Peters then, the Grand Belgian, going through as others try to match him. That's Peters from the other view. You can see his white jersey.
Absolutely flying over these cobblestones, and these cobblestones are so slippery. If you're an agile rider, Hincapie has got a front wheel problem. There's a neutral service man right alongside there. The whole of this race here, this section covered by the neutral service vehicles. Hincapie's up and riding again, and that is Nico Matin coming by him at the moment. But this is a mad section of cobblestones. It's only opened up for this bike race and the amateur version of it twice a year. It's totally closed.
Well, the exit for Wilfred Peters, a brilliant piece of cobblestone riding he's done. George Hincapie robbed of a chance to be with him there when he was setting the pace. He fell off, and then when he was trying to restart, I think he nipped his tyre and had a puncture. So further back now, Hincapie still trying to rejoin in the distance there. It could be Ludo Dierksen, but I think in fact it's Chris Pears on his wheel.
Well, this is Stefan Weissermann from Telecom. You can hardly see the pink jersey of Weissermann on the front here. A tough man, a former East German. Leon van Bonn is the next man to come through. There is Rolf Sorensen, the next man coming through. We're there as well, Johan Museeuw, followed by Knaven. Voigt, the world champion, made a great recovery there. Last man to get into this section of cobblestones. He did recover to get onto the back end of this tail.
Onto smooth tarmac, and it must feel smooth after that. These are the last riders of the remnants of that breakaway now, as also the brilliant servicemen on motorbikes keep these guys on. Another problem here, this is Dierksen's. Dierksen's has a puncture as well.
Rear wheel puncture for Dierksen's, a Mavic neutral service car there very quickly indeed. The rear tail wheel normally takes about 15 seconds to change. Let's see how quick this man is doing right now. But with everybody's hands and fingers very cold, it makes it just a little bit slower. He's tightening up the quick release skewer right now. He's trying to lock it into place. Dierksen's up and running, but he's lost about 30 seconds.
Must feel like a lifetime there. The line of Flanders flag was flying for Dierksen's. As we look further down, we look at our lonely chaser here and former champion of Paris-Roubaix, André Schmil. And further back down, other riders coming up now. But you know, Paul, you get the feeling that breakaway is dictating everything here now. They've come through, well, reasonably okay.
Everybody's got through fairly safely there. The man who had the most problems really was George Hincapie. Must have been a softening front tyre for Hincapie, which is why he then had to get a spare wheel from the neutral service motorbike at the side of the road. Schmil, though, doing a storming ride, but I would say when he comes out of the Forest of Arenberg, Phil, he's going to be around about 2.5 minutes behind, because it's a long time since Wilfred Peters exited this section of cobbles.
Well, these riders are hardly recognisable now. It looks like Arvis Pisiks, who was the champion of Latvia, gritting his teeth here. He was 2 hours in a coal mine as they try now to come over the cobblestones. This is a deep group here now as we look down, one or two of the names. And André Taffé is in there, a third wheel.
A little further back there on the left in the blue and white jersey is Peter van Petegem. He too trying to fight his way back from illness at the start of this classic season. These riders, I would think, Phil, almost 2.5 minutes behind the leaders of this race at the moment.
Well, they have a lot of work to do, but we're reaching now 165 kilometres covered. And so we're inside 100k, only just to go to the finish. And I think behind this big group, then you can write everybody else out of the hunt today. There's Peters going through, but this group still could get back, you know.
Well, there's a long way to go. It's amazing to think. Normally you just in a situation here at Paris-Roubaix when the race is only just beginning. Right now these guys are looking at 100 kilometers, 2.5 hours of racing before they get to the finishing velodrome. Looking down through the line there, we wonder what has happened to the US Postal Service today, because apart from Georgie Hincapie, I haven't seen any of the other men in this race who would be expected to help him. But it looked as if somebody was just coming through there from USPS, and a long way behind if they would wanted to help Georgie Hincapie today. Wilfred Peters now is finding himself in a lone lead situation. I'm not sure if he would want to do that with 100 kilometers to go.
Well, he's flown over the cobbles and he's maintained it. He's now heading for the pavé with a 30-second lead over a general regrouping behind. I don't know if Dirksen is back there yet. We'll find out when we get back there ourselves. This man's on the smooth stretch of roads now as he heads towards Wallers. Then he'll make a right and he'll get back into the cobblestones again as we head across country towards Orchy. This is the chase group, and a remarkable ride being done here by Jens Voigt. He must be tired, yet he's still up with the leaders.
This is going to become a very tactical situation now, because we've got 3 Domo Farm Freaks riders in this group. The man you can see there, the world champion, doing a great recovery, puncturing and changing a machine just before he came into the forest of Arenberg. Johan Museo is in this group, as is Servais Carnarvon. They will sit on the group now, Phil, and force the other riders in the group to do a lot of work. Coming back there, a great move here by number 56, and that is one of the top riders from Cofidis here, Chris Pears. He's sitting up alongside Georgie Hincapie. This now should give the advantage for the man at the front, Wilfred Peters, to build up a lead of 1 or 2 minutes, and that will be difficult to nail back towards the end.
Well, they're not going to chase him yet. He's still got a long way to go. They know he is a carrot for them to react to because of the presence of Johan Museo in this group. But we'll go up and see him. This is the next stretch of cobblestones now. This will be Wallers and take us through to 171 kilometres. And this is a stand up and win or fall down and lose today, Paris-Roubaix. This stretch not too bad, and we speak with feeling because Paul Scher, myself and some American friends rode over this next section or so. And apart from these initial potholes, Paul, it's not too bad, is it?
It's not a bad section of cobblestones. In fact, at the moment, there isn't too much mud on it either. It's been resurfaced in this part. We're going to go through a bridge here known as the Pont Gibus, which is actually nicknamed after Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, the Frenchman who won Paris-Roubaix on 2 occasions. But just to go back to the forest of Arenberg there, Phil, a couple of years ago, I was riding Paris-Roubaix in a situation like this, a day like this. It's total chaos going into the forest. You don't really know as a bike rider what is happening. I was leading out my teammate Alain Bondu at the time, and we got into the forest in the first positions. Total chaos. When we came out of it, I looked across at Alain and said, "How many riders are in front?" And he said, "This is the front." And then it hit me, there was still 100 kilometers to go.
And that's just about what Wilfred is facing here. He's 36.5 years of age now. This is the Pont Gibus. When I first started covering Paris-Roubaix, there was a bridge there, but that's gone now. And this is a slow motion sweeping left-hander where you have to watch your line very carefully through that mud in the centre. But Peters is such a great bike handler, he rides this like it's almost smooth road. Latest time check we're getting, 45 seconds is lead now over that group, which is grouping at the back almost all together. Here they are.
Well, they're not actually chasing him very hard at the moment. There's spread across the road somewhat. The hammer not down at all. This will give the advantage to the lone leader, Wilfred Peters. He's got an awful long way to ride on his own, especially with the fact that there is a prevailing cross headwind for the next 40 or 50 kilometers. That is going to make it very difficult for him. I don't think he's quite got the engine to stay off the front, but he is a very special bike rider. What they will be thinking now is it's putting the advantage into the tactical court of Domo Farm Freaks, and Johan Museo will be very happy with that. In fact, Wilfred Peters, a very big personal friend of Johan Museo's. They spend most of the winter months actually going on holiday together. They don't train together because they live too far apart, but they spend an awful lot of time in each other's company.
Well, I always breathe a sigh of relief when I see the field cross over those railway tracks, because that, believe it or not, is quite a busy railway line. And if those barriers do go down, then it means they'll have to stop. And if Wilfred Peters is in front, he will escape, that's for sure. We're looking at one of the heroes of the early breakaway still here now, Brad, who's having a wonderful start to the season for Festina. And he's also riding well here because he's got himself back up to the group after that rough ride over the forest of Arenberg cobbles.
Well, we're still heading along the right-hand bend. It now straightens up towards the main road, and they'll take a left-hander off the end of this. Stefan Weseman is the man in pink at the front for Team Telecom, being given the responsibility as team leader for the Classics. He rode very well in Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders last year, which is why the team, I think, have given him the respect of position of team leader going into this event. What happens very often in Paris-Roubaix is, although the team management come up alongside to give the riders drinks and take on board food, usually in Paris-Roubaix the mechanic will also lean out of the window on the tarmac stretches and spray oil onto the chains, because there is so much water and grit coming up into the chains on a day like this that it causes the gearing to jump quite a lot. So you've got to keep a very close eye on that.
Yes, absolutely. Now the riders concentrating. We're on stretch number 12 here now, and we count down to 1. Don't forget, we started at cobbles number 24 at Troisville, heading down towards the 1 as the riders make another left turn. A chance to look at the bikes here, already recognisable, but bearing the name Eddie Merckx, of one of the greatest bike riders of all time, and a man who excelled too in Paris-Roubaix. And so this bike being done proud now by Wilfred Peters. Even if he is nearly 37 years of age, he's had a third and a second before in this event. Almost not good enough last year for Wilfred, only 11th. But of course, his job was to make Johan Museeuw get the victory, and he did just that. Now he's clear. The gap is still going up, 46 seconds now.
He's a tough bike rider, one of the very few who I would put up alongside Sean Yates as top domestiques in the world. This man is worth his weight in gold. He does an awful lot of work for the team. He actually won a semi-classic as well, the same one that Georgi Hincapie won 4 days ago. He won Gent-Wevelgem back in 1994. And I think on that occasion he was going across the line just in front of his own teammate.
So Domo Fritz, we've waited to see them in front of our camera lens this season, the brand new team on the block, and Patrick Lefevre, the team manager, fending all of the journalists' difficult questions until now, but he'll be feeling very happy with the way things are going so far today. 4 men still in this group, despite a bike change for Weinsteins and a puncture to Johan Museeuw. And thanks to a fall for George Hincapie, we've got 1 rider alone in front. But I wonder what would have happened there, Paul, if George hadn't have fell. And maybe Peters would have joined him, and George would have been committed very early on to go for gold.
George wouldn't have wanted to be in a breakaway situation like that. That's much too far to go to the finish. 100 kilometers on a race like this and a day like this certainly is something that I wouldn't want to ask any bike rider. If I'd been his team manager and he'd come out of the Forest of Arenberg with Peters, I'd have told him to sit up and wait for the group, because we're too far out from the finish. Right now, though, it's looking rather good for Peters, because the last time check we got was Peters has a 1 minute advantage over this group. Dario Pieri is chasing behind at 2.5 minutes, and the group with Andre Schmielfil is actually slipping away now. They're 3.5 minutes back.
Joined him, so and George would have been committed very early on to go for gold.
But you George wouldn't have wanted to be in a breakaway situation like that. That's much too far to go to the finish. 100 kilometers on a race like this and a day like this certainly is something that I wouldn't want.
They're concentrating rather cleverly on keeping the race fairly tight. Pressure off a little bit while Peter sets the pace up front. I noticed there Jens Voigt talking in his native language to his friend Stefan Weseman, on a rival team of course, and probably asking each other how well they're going today. It's strange really, but they don't see each other as direct rivals when you're battling a course like this.
Well, those 2 riders may well have to form some kind of an alliance, because there's a lot of Belgians in this group, and Domo Farm Frites are looking exceptionally strong. And also, let's not forget, there are 2 riders from Cofidis, the 2 Belgian riders, Nico Martin and Chris Peers. And we're getting information coming from the back of the race that, in fact, Philippe Gaumont, who crashed dramatically, has been evacuated by ambulance to the hospital in Valenciennes.
Well, let's hope he's okay. I was a bit worried the way he fell on his right leg there. He either could have hurt his hip or indeed his knee. And let's hope we haven't got another situation like we had a couple of years back with Johan Museeuw. Anyway, the race going on at the front here now. Winter so far stretching into spring, and the rapeseed on the right there just about breaking into yellow flower as Wilfred races past. He's really no intention of slowing down here. This is a serious intent. His idea is to hurt the chasers and to make them come after him, because he's thinking of giving Johan Museeuw an easy ride now. And Johan wouldn't be a surprise to any of us anymore if he could produce the finish that we all know he's capable of.
The only thing that this man's thinking about at the moment, I'm sure the word has come forward from the team management to say, right, ride as hard as you can because you'll take the pressure off our team. They can sit in that group of riders behind and slipstream and maybe just not get involved in any of the fracas over the cobblestones. And who knows, if your advantage goes up to 3 or 4 minutes, we could turn the tables and cause a massive surprise in Paris-Roubaix today. But the important thing for Domo Farm Frites is to get a lot of publicity out of this race and put pressure on the other guys in this chasing group here.
62 seconds now, so he's pulling away. And this is the breakaway. Dierkson's on the front at the moment. Chris Piers, Leon Van Bon, Georgie Hincapie, Stefan Vesserman. Broad has got back. Also in there, Jens Voigt, and not least, of course, Museo and Servais Canavan and Roman Weinsteins. They're a really solid group down there.
They're not working very hard though, Phil. You can see obviously the Domo guys are taking it easy, not going to the front very much. Hincapie moving forward because he wants to encourage the other single riders in this group who are not represented at the front to go forward and make sure that they keep ticking by. But look at that, Johan Museo moves up into second. He will soft shoe it just a little bit there to try and slow down the tempo on the front and try and allow Wilfred Peters to build up a little bit more advantage over the group. They're facing now another section of cobblestones in about 3 kilometers time, and that section of cobblestones is going to be 3.7 kilometers long. They're fairly good cobblestones, but I tell you what, the length of them makes them very difficult.
They are indeed, and again we speak with feeling because we've ridden those as well 4 days ago, but I have to say they were drier then than they are today following overnight rain. As we're still with this group here, and it's nice to see that Rolf Sorensen is right here in this group, a very good rider from Denmark, and a typical move from him would be a lone break near the end. It certainly wouldn't be the sort that Peters is doing right now. There is Leon Van Bon. No, it's not, it's Sven Nys. Almost can't recognise anybody anymore now. Here comes Leon as he goes through. Just doing enough to say they're going through and off without disrupting the pace too much on the teammates of Domo. There's Ludo Dierkson's almost calmed down after his puncture. Awkward change it was too, so he's had a tough chase to get back, but he seems to have recovered.
Difficult situation for him to be in right now because his friend and training partner is the man off the front of the main field. We might find a situation where he doesn't really want to chase him down too much and he'll leave it up to the other riders in this group. The impetus not great right now. I think they will have a status quo for the next 30 or 40 kilometers. Having one lone leader is not a dangerous situation right now unless he starts to build up massive amounts of time and approaches a 5-minute margin. But I think what we'll find is they will accelerate over the cobblestones to keep themselves out of difficulty and then slow down on the tarmac, and that will probably stabilize the advantage of this man, Wilfred Peters, who for the moment is still starting to build on his lead.
This is Pavé 11, 3.7 kilometres in 2 slices. He gets a small bit of respite, but even so, they are dry now. The weather up this part of northern France, thankfully not as bad. The showers are very unpredictable. They're coming through and just dumping on certain sections of the race, and other places don't get rain at all. But the good thing is, Paul, the spectators keep moving around this course, and they don't just see the race pass by once.
Well, if you know how to get your way around Paris-Roubaix, it's pretty impressive. You can see it 4 or 5 times because it's all through the fields of the northern part of France, and there's a lot of side roads here. If you have a good map, you can pick your way through and see the road on a number of occasions. And most of these people who come out to see the race, they actually take portable televisions with them as well, so they can keep up to scratch on just exactly where the race is unfolding. This is the end of the first half of this long cobblestone sections. When Peters gets to the end of it, he'll take a right turn by the 2 big water towers there, and the Lions of Flanders out to cheer him on, and they have nothing more exciting for them to have a Belgian leading this race.
Well, he's off that little stretch for the moment as he sprints out of the saddle. It's like a renter crowd, really. They all rush into the buses and they race round to another section of the course. Just look at this massive crowd as they turns there. There's the entry of the peloton. They're timed at 1:32 there. So they are 1:32. He is still pulling away and riding solid.
Well, it's obvious if you look at the tempo here. We've got one rider on the front, Ludo Dirksen, setting not a very rapid pace just now, which is why Wilfred Peters is able to build up on his advantage. The 2 Cofidis riders are sitting at the back of the group, and Florian Bras is also back there. I think he's just hoping to survive right now. And there you get a chance to see the speed of the riders over the cobblestones. As we look now, they're going to take in the second section of this very long 3.7 kilometer road of cobblestones. There's still an awful lot of cobblestones to go to the finish, 10 more sections and some still very difficult ones. I think one of the most decisive ones is the Pavé de l'Arbre, which comes at around about 25 kilometers to go to the finish. Dieriksen quite content to ride on the front, but he's got all of the Domo riders on his wheel and they will not help him at all.
And Museo was the first man. He looked really cool there. There's Sven Nys, Rolf Sorensen, Chris Piers. These are the riders still happily tagged on. 13 of them there trying to get on terms with the 14th man who's away. And that's Wilfred Peters. There's our brave television cameraman. There's the shot he's getting for us. And George Hincapie, is it right now on the front? Yes, it is. I can hardly recognise him now. A big George coming through onto smooth bit of pavé here. And he's very alert today, George, and looking so strong.
This is the unfortunate thing for George being on US Postal Service in this particular race, because he doesn't have any teammates with him. He could do with somebody like Ekimov being in this group right now, or Cedric Vasseur, who could come to the front and keep the tempo on. George shouldn't have to do that kind of work himself, and that could well pay when we get to the final 20 or 30 kilometers, when the big attacks come, and I'm sure they will come from Johan Museo. This race at the moment seems to be being set up ideally for the man in second position there, Museo, who looks very comfortable on these cobblestones, but so too does Ronan Weinsteins, the current world champion.
Well, frankly, I'm stunned by the way Museo rides. He is such a brilliant cyclist. When you speak to people who know Johan and know his mentality, they talk in glowing terms about this man who can apply himself to certain events. And one of those events is Paris-Roubaix. He just turns himself on for this event and he doesn't do a thing wrong. And there he is now, second wheel, riding on the wheel of a man who's used to tough roads like this, because he's won the peace race, that race across Berlin, Prague and Warsaw so many times, and you often encounter, especially in Poland, roads like this. And that's Stefan Westermann driving at the front. There is the group. The gap, as I said, 1:32, the last check we got. And it's just line astern again, all under the impetus of one rider.
Well, Johan Museo is a real tough bike rider. Ronan Weinsteins has gone to the front. In fact, no, it's not Ronan Weinsteins. This is one of the Mercury riders in one of the second groups further down. There's Andre Schmiel. In front of him is Andrea Taffy. And this is they're on the same section of cobblestones right now.
I think that's Van Petegem on the top, on the front, and looking down there's an awful lot of Rabobank riders trapped in this group now. We've got a time check of over 3 minutes to this group, so they're losing ground at the moment. As we continue now back up with the other riders, this is thankfully a little bit better weather-wise, but the breakaways are staying well clear of any chase being organised.
Well, these riders are an awful long way behind. The last official time gap we had for them was around about 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the pressure doesn't really seem to be on very much at all. But just going back to what we were saying before about Johan Museo, he's been professional since 1988. He's got almost 100 victories in his career, Phil, but he really has, I would say, have been the classics rider of the 90s. Before that, we regarded Sean Kelly as being the classic man of the 80s, but Museo is a man who specializes in one-day bike races, which is strange because when he started off his career, he was regarded very much as a bunch sprinter, the very same way that Eric Zabel seems to be developing right now. Zabel, although he was a great bunch sprinter when he turned professional, he now seems to be able to ride the one-day races as well.
I think it comes with age, unfortunately. The twitch fibers tend to disappear, but the strength gets double as to what you start out with as a young pro bike rider. Looking at Wilfred Peters, the man who has taken the bull by the horns well and truly today. As he left the Forest of Arlenberg, he continued on when he saw George Hincapie fall down, and has continued on now and built a lead of over 1.5 minutes.
Well, Hincapie putting the pressure on the second half of this very long section of cobblestones, and he's riding right off the front at the moment. Sitting on his wheel, tucked very nicely in there, was one of the Domo riders, and in fact it's Johan Museo in person. These guys are very good at marking the men they feel who are dangerous. You can see Hincapie really putting the pressure on. He needs to sit back because he needs a little work to come from the other riders if they want to pull back Wilfred Peters. He doesn't need to do it on his own.
The cobblestones, are still plenty of them left here as we're heading to sector 10 now, and the split in the group here. This is a definite split now, and it looks as though Hincapie's dragging Museo, Knaven, Weinsteins was there as well, and Dieriksen's also there, and it looks as though Westermann is one of the riders who's missed, along with other weaker riders, including Rolf Sorensen. So we have a split on Pavé strip number 11, Paul, and this is going to put time between them. Look at this massive crowd here. End of number 11 now for Ludo Peters. So he's stretched by about a kilometre difference as they come out now. So Wilfred Peters, rather, Ludo's long since retired. Wilfred Peters is now still leading here as we go off pavé stretch number 11.
Well, as Wilfred Peters settles down to the job in hand, you can see here Georgie Hincapie, Phil, is setting the pace over this section of cobblestones, and Johan Museo was not happy at how close the motorbike was getting there, because that was being used by Hincapie to accelerate. 4 men now going off the front. They've literally exploded this group over the cobblestone section, and a lot of riders now being left far behind.
Well, this stretch of cobbles, as far as holes are concerned, isn't quite so bad. This is pure speed and strength now, and clearly the stronger men have got to the front of this group. Stefan Westerman, Jens Voigt must be tired. He's further behind, but Servais Knaven is here, sitting up behind Dirksen. Then we've got Museo. Georgie Hincapie is the man doing the power. Well, you can bet your life that Museo won't be, because he's still got Peters up front, but there's definitely a reaction here now.
Well, if this breakaway situation was at 25 kilometres to go, I would say this is the winning break. This would be a great situation to be in, but, you know, we're still looking at around about 85 kilometres to go to the finish line, so it's not a good situation. I would say they need to sit up now and wait for a couple of riders to come back from behind who obviously have heard it. But this, Phil, look at this. This is Ronan Weinstein's. We've got 6 men now, 3 men from the same team, Domo Farm Frites. They're being joined there by 51, which is Nico Matin. Now, the team today who are dominating are Domo Farm Frites. It looks like they've got everything spot on once again at Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, well, I think Museo was delighted there to see the arrival of Weinstein. That's completed the men he wanted around him, and he looks pretty contented now, because a little bit of a shout there. He's having a word with Nico Matin. Guy wants him to do some work as well. He's going to say, well, I've no reason to chase. Gets George